out of my container. I'm going to put it right in my palm. I'm going to take one of my little balls of ganache. I'm going to roll it in this chocolate. Now, when I go to put this back on the sheet pan, I'm going to roll it over to my other hand and then roll it gently onto the paper. The reason I do it that way is for two reasons. One, I want a thin, even coat. The other reason is I want to be able to place exactly where I want it. I don't want to have two different truffles touching. So in order to avoid that, I make sure I'm careful about how I place them on the parchment. That way they won't be touching. You don't have to worry about, having conjoined twins. You'll also notice I work from the farthest end of my sheet pan towards myself. I'm going to start on this row. I'm going to work my way all the way towards myself. That way I'm never working over my old work. I'm always avoiding that by putting my old work ahead of me and making sure that that work never gets disturbed. This first coat's rather thin. Remember that we get retraction out of chocolate. Because it retracts, it's going to squeeze the ganache that's inside of it. What's going to happen then is the ganache is only going to be able to retract and squeeze so much, and then you're going to get cracks. Cracks along the surface of the chocolate. Sometimes you'll even get little eruptions, like little volcanoes of the ganache poking out from the chocolate. That's okay, because this is your first coat. It's your second coat, which will cover up those cracks. But now, the retraction of the first chocolate layer has done its work and has squeezed that ganache to its limit. And now you're not going to have to worry about that with your second layer, because the second layer will retract, but it will retract a solid layer of first layer of chocolate. So you're going to end up with a very strong exterior that's not going to crack on you and have problems. The only time that's going to be an exception to that is going to be if you refrigerate them. Never refrigerate truffles. If you refrigerate them, they'll retract even more, and you get cracking. And cracking means moisture transfer, bacteria transfer, and of course less shelf life.
How long did you say they last for?
2 to 3 weeks at room temperature. So you'll notice as I do this, I'm doing the same method every time. I put one in my hand, I get a little more chocolate on my fingers, I roll it over to the other hand, drop it onto the parchment. I keep things nice and organized, nice neat rows. I do that not just because I'm anal retentive, I do that because I want to keep track of my work. And I want to make sure that I remember that that one is the first one I worked on. So when I get all the way down here, I can come back to that one. That's my first one. And I can say, well, that's the one that's going to get the next coat first.
Should you put these back in the fridge and let them hard up?
I'll just let this harden up at room temperature, because it'll do so. Now that the chocolate's tempered, it should harden by itself at room temperature.
I was looking at like it's the same color.
Each one of these little truffles won't have a foot, because I have a thin layer. If you have a really thick layer of chocolate, you're going to end up with a foot on the bottom of your truffle. And a foot is basically just the extra chocolate that's oozed down and has formed this sort of little foot at the bottom. It makes the truffle look like it's wearing bell bottoms. And while that might have been popular at one time, it's not popular anymore.
How often do you find a company or a bakery that does handmade truffles?
Not much anymore. Even the really good ones, like I know it's one place in Chicago, I call it Vosges, and Vosges Chocolates is in the Nordstrom Plaza on Michigan Avenue. Wonderful place, great flavors, but it's all machine made. You can tell they're all perfect, they all look exactly the same, and that's the one thing I don't like about it. See, I like truffles that have a little bit of variation to them.
Aren't truffles that have truffles in them?
Well, these chocolate truffles can have real truffles in them. You can put real truffle oil in your ganache. You can put it in there for flavor, but it's just meant to look. It just looks like a truffle. So it's not really the mushroom.
Just sit out when it's softened up.
They will soften if it gets too warm. Like I made these for wedding favors one year, and I put them out, and it was 93 degrees outside, and humidity was rocket high, typical Southern Illinois on Memorial Day weekend.
Well, I mean, just the ganache.
Oh, the ganache, it will.
It's not rolling.
It will soften.
I'm losing like half of it.
Yeah, I lose some of it in my hands too because it's just my hands are warm. The room is unusually warm today.
Stay in the cooler.
I have had
I saw
people.
someone do that last year.
I've had people do that. Yeah, I've had students do that. They go down to the cooler and they roll their truffles in the walk-in refrigerator. So far, so good though. I've had some pretty good success here getting mine to work even though the room's warm. I'd say we're at the very limit of what these truffles can handle today. I would estimate it's probably 75 degrees in this room right now.
It's got to be higher than that.
It might be higher than that.
Sharing that tidbit of information.
And with that kind of temperature, it's really hard to get the chocolate to do everything you want it to do because it's busy trying to harden, and it's ideally, like to be at about 68 down to 62 degrees. It would really like to be a little cooler. So, getting back to the rancher, this first layer is doing several things. One, it's retracting and it's squeezing the ganache. Two, it's sealing up all the open spaces and creating a watertight seal. And three, it's preparing the truffle for the second layer of chocolate. And they look nice, yeah. It's a you know, it's just a beautiful thing.
And the second layer is just the same thing, only you want to make sure to set it on a different edge.
Yeah, I set it really carefully so that it has very little foot, and it's I try to make sure that wherever the original bald spot was, if I can, is somewhere other than the bottom. You know, that way you're getting a solid layer of chocolate that's hard, that will protect the interior from being exposed to the outside world.
Okay.
That just gives you that you know, nice long shelf life that you're hoping for in a truffle.